All right, good afternoon, everybody. So I've had this system up and running for the last 30 days or so. So I kind of want to go through what are my overall experiences and thoughts on this entire 10 kVA kit from Current Connected, which includes the Victron MultiPlus-II 5kVA inverters, the Lynx Bus Bar System, and the Cerbo GX and Touchscreen. Regardless of whatever system you install, there's going to be some things that you like, and there's going to be some things that you don't. And so I kind of want to go through what I have found through the installation process, through setting the system up, through its usage. You know, what do I like and what do I don't like? So I'll start off with the fact that, yes, I have been running this 10 kVA system, which is a reduction of power output from my last system. My last system was 13,000 watts, and that's 13,000 watts at a pure 100% power factor. When you start throwing in the inductive loads and everything, obviously your power output is going to be reduced. So I have been reduced from 13,000 kVA down to 10,000 kVA. But I have been running this, like I said, for the last month or so, and I have not had to actually stop and think, okay, what do I have running? Can I turn on this next load and not have all the lights in the house go out? I haven't done it. I haven't had to worry about it. So we've got the entire bus bar system that came with this 10 kVA kit, which includes the Lynx Power In, the Lynx Shunt, and the Lynx Distributor. This does give you one nice clean looking bus bar system that's rated for 1,000 amps. If you look at this system, it's completely sealed all the way around, except for where you have your wires coming in. And then they have their wires coming in and paired nicely, so you can look at any pair of wires and you know these two are associated together. These are associated together. This really does simplify your wiring. So with the cover off, taking a look at the Lynx Power In, it's a very simple looking system. Like I said, your positive wire and your negative wire stack on top of each other. They have these separators which allow for a clean separation between your positive bus bar and your negative bus bar. They give you the ability on the side for expansion, and then over here you can see it is interconnected to the next component in the string. Ultimately, as I look at this, there really isn't a whole lot that I would say I don't like about it. If I had to find one thing that I don't care for, it is the fact that it only has 4 spots. You know, it would be nice if we could utilize this center spot and have another lug here and then be able to utilize that lug as well, but I believe that's supposed to be for grounding your negative connection if you have to do that. Now moving over to the next piece of equipment in this bus bar string, we have the Lynx Shunt. So again, this is 1,000 amps rated. So looking at the inside, your shunt actually runs down here, and then we have a CNN 325 amp fuse up here across the top, positive connection. But I do like the fact that it integrates seamlessly into this bus bar, but there's a handful of things regarding this shunt that I just don't really care for. The voltage on this, when I measured the voltage from my meter on the different components and even on the terminals here, I was consistently getting 150 to 250 millivolts off. And in looking at the Victron forums, I see quite a few people commenting on the fact that the measurement is off. And there's no way to adjust that. Another thing that I don't care about is the fact that you see this wire here, this actually is the communication and power line for this Lynx distributor. But unfortunately, all the data that this Lynx distributor has, it really can't be utilized by this shunt. but we'll talk about that a little bit when we get to the distributor. This shunt doesn't seem to have all the software capabilities as the Smart Shunt does. So they upgraded this software back in January, I believe, of this year, which gives you the ability to remember the state of charge when power is lost. This shunt does not have that ability. This Smart Shunt has Bluetooth. This does not. The only way that you can program the state of charge values on this shunt is to have it connected to a CAN bus network through the Cerbo. Looking over at the Lynx Distributor, so this is where all of your different devices, your inverters, your charge controllers are going to be connected in. And this actually has LED indicators which signify whether or not you have blown a fuse on the individual circuit. Now looking at the inside, this does resemble the Lynx Power In very closely. And in fact, it really is the exact same thing. The only difference is they put these studs here for your fuses, and then there's the communication circuit board. But other than that, this is a Lynx Power In. So you can see we've got our mega fuses across the top. There's our green indicator light. And then our communication cable, which, as I mentioned a moment ago, unfortunately, the information on this distributor does not get passed to this shunt next to it. And you say, well, what do you mean by communication? So if we open the Victron Connect app, and I open up the VRM to actually look at the Lynx Shunt, but you can see across the top here we've got 4 tabs: status, history, trends, and distributor. So if I tap on distributor, you can see distributor A, B, C, and D. And that correlates to these little dip switches right in here. You can have 4 of these distributors configured in a row for communication back to what should be the Lynx Shunt. Unfortunately, from what I have seen, the only place that it can communicate to is the Lynx Smart BMS, which costs more money. It does not come back in here and pass the data to the Lynx Shunt and then give you the ability to set alarms and notifications based on the status of the individual fuses, if they are good or if they are bad. At this point in time, I would probably just end up buying another Lynx Power In, add my own studs across the bottom, and save some money on the Power In versus the distributor, because all I'm getting is a few visual indicator lights. You know, you're paying for the circuit board and then a few extra bolts, really. So moving up to the MultiPlus-II 48-volt 5kVA inverters. These were much easier to install because they have a bracket that mounts back here. And the inverters themselves are actually heavier. I believe they're about 70 pounds. So having that bracket to where you can mount the bracket on the wall and then only have to muscle the inverter up to hang it on that bracket saves you an awful lot of time than having to get your holes lined up while holding everything up and then screwing everything in. Another thing that I like about this is the clearance requirements on the sides are much smaller. So I believe 4 inches is the clearance requirement that you need around the sides. So if you're limited in space, like I am, needing less clearance around your different devices can help save space on the walls. I've already done the video on this, but the sound on these inverters is significantly quieter. These do allow me to save about 3.2 kilowatts in idle consumption in a 24-hour period. These have about 15 watts idle consumption. These do have, as I stated earlier, they have less power output, but because they have the toroidal transformer in the top, they do have a better handling of inductive loads and a better surge ability. Now, looking at this layout, this entire black section down here, this is all wiring space. You have about 8 inches of space in here to work with to be able to wire, to adjust your cabling and move it all around. Now, while we've got this opened up, one thing that I did not care for too much about this specific inverter is they are not really designed to have these conduits. The spacing is very tight. In fact, in order for me to get these conduit fittings in here, I actually had to shave down the threads on these so they would fit through the existing holes in the bottom plate of the inverter. Now, these inverters do allow for a lot of customization. I don't know if you noticed it, but there's an extra wire in this inverter. When we were looking inside, I'm actually utilizing that wire to determine when my AC input connection is turned on and off, but I'm also using that to determine when am I going to have AC in charging turned on and off. And that's all customization utilizing the Cerbo, the relays inside the inverters, and the MultiPlus software. You saw in one of my earlier videos I wasn't too thrilled about the fact that I had to use a Windows machine and some really old software in order to program these inverters. And I'm still not the biggest fan of the software. I've kind of gotten used to the fact that that's how you program things and make changes. I have realized that there is a way using the Victron VRM to download the configuration file from your inverters, make changes, and then re-upload remotely so that you don't have to have one of these Mark III to USB devices and be directly plugged into the inverters. So that is a plus. Unfortunately, you still need that Windows machine and that older software in order to make those changes. It's kind of a two-edged sword right now. I love the customization ability, but in order to customize, I have to use the older software to do it. So you can take that as a pro and a con, I guess, of this entire system. So looking at this last component of the system, that's the Cerbo GX, which really ends up being the brains of the entire environment. It allows for interconnection between your different device protocols, BMS CAN, VE CAN, VE Bus, and VE Direct, all through one integrated device. It also has the ability to add on tank sensors, temperature sensors, and digital inputs, and also comes with a few different relays as well. Now we've got this Cerbo GX touchscreen display, which is a 7-inch touchscreen display. And this gives you direct access into the Cerbo itself. And you can see on the screen, it actually looks different than the default. And that's because I added a custom modification to add all this extra information to be displayed on screen. But this screen is great for easy visualization of what's going on in your system and having something right there. So in the past, I would have to either scroll through different menus on the displays, or I would have to pull out my phone and look at the different details from either the watch power or solar assistant app. But I would always have to have some kind of an extra device there, or you've got to scroll through different displays and then do the math to figure out, all right, what's my system as a whole doing? But not only can I see the information on this screen, I can also light tap and go to the menu, and then I can change different settings on a lot of the different components. I can't get super duper detailed, but then I can come in here and set additional notifications on top of just the specific device notification. So the Cerbo can have its own notifications on top of the MultiPlus notifications, on top of the MPPT notifications. So just an awful lot of customization. Now you don't have to have this display. You could be running everything off of a tablet and just have a little tablet mounted on the wall here and do the exact same thing. Now, one thing that has been a little bit of an annoyance to me is sometimes when I tap certain things, the response is slower. And I don't know if that's just because I'm not pushing hard enough. It could just be me, but that's one thing that I have noticed. Maybe I'm just used to touchscreens being a little more sensitive. Now, from the Cerbo standpoint, they do have their Venus OS operating system, which can be loaded on certain Raspberry Pis, and you can utilize the Raspberry Pi instead of having a Cerbo. And that can be great because it can save you some money, but it all depends on what devices you need interconnected into your Cerbo system. If you end up having to interconnect different protocols with the VE bus, the VE direct, the VE CAN, it really probably just makes sense to go with the Cerbo that has those different connections built in natively than to have to get all the different adapters to try and connect into the Raspberry Pi. I do really recommend having a Cerbo in a Victron environment because it's not only the brains, but it also lets you take all this data, all this information, and push it up to the Victron VRM, which is the remote monitoring software. So the Victron VRM remote monitoring software gives you detailed information about what your system is actually doing at any point in time. Plus, it also gives you access to the historical data of your system. You can see different settings, and I'm not trying to make this an in-depth VRM tutorial. I will probably do one of those later. I just want to show you the benefits of having that brain and interconnecting your devices and being able to visualize and see all this data remotely. And I can navigate back through all the data that I have accumulated since my system has been online. So overall, this system has been running very well for me. I have not had any issues. I really have not even had to reach out to support at all to figure out how to get things to work. The inverters were already pre-programmed for split phase, so I didn't have to mess with any of that. The only thing I had to do from a configuration standpoint was turn off the ground neutral relays in both inverters. The couple of times that I have reached out to support were kind of conceptual questions. You know, can I do this? Does it have this ability? It's not, oh, this is broken, this isn't working, I need to get it fixed. I had responses probably within an hour. So I got the system, I put it on the wall, and it just worked. So I had somebody ask a question recently, which I thought was a very good question, and I thought I would kind of share it with you. So they asked, knowing what you know now, with the cost difference between your old system and your new system, if you had to buy something from scratch, would you pay the extra money and go with the new system, or would you save the money and go with the old system? And I had to stop and think about that one because I want to say there's a good $3,000 difference between the systems. Then I thought, you know, something that probably isn't taken into account very often is the time that it takes to get the system running, but also troubleshooting issues with the system and talking with support on issues with the system. Time is expensive. I mean, your time is valuable, my time is valuable. And so if you had to pay yourself for that time utilized in troubleshooting, in trying to figure out why this isn't working this way, in trying to, you know, get help from support. So if I paid myself for all that time that I spent trying to figure out issues, I'd be able to buy the expensive system several times. So would I go through and actually spend the money ahead of time and put in the new system or the old system? Well, I'd spend the money and put in the new system. So all in all, my thoughts on the different components that have been utilized in the system, some good, some bad. And so far, I'm very happy with how things have been going. And I look forward to, really pushing this system a little more. Now, I unfortunately don't have the battery capacity right now, the solar capacity right now to move the rest of my house over to the system to really push it hard long term. At some point, I hope to really grow the system more so that I can do that. I'll be doing some tests with, the air conditioner, and I know it'll run the dryer. I know it'll run the stove. But maybe I'll use those to kind of push the system a little bit to see, how far we can go with it. I've been looking into, maybe putting a mini split in one room of my house that doesn't have any central heating or cooling. There's a gas fireplace in that room, but nothing else. So, adding a mini split onto the system as well. So a lot of things that I want to do at some point, I just have to, save up my pennies to be able to add these additional pieces on, to be able to expand my system more. So over time, that'll eventually happen. I do want to do a lot more customization with this system, as I stated earlier, so that'll be coming in future videos. That's just kind of showing some of the power of this system. With that, I'm going to let y'all go. Y'all stay safe, stay cool, and we'll catch up with you later.